I call the honourable member Simon O'Connor.
Mr Speaker, thank you for the chance to take this call, and particularly after the Greens, there's a few things that need to be put on record to get straight. The first is that actually around FATCA, the IGA, the Intergovernmental Agreement, has been signed. So when the opposition, the Greens included, are saying that it hasn't been, that's just patently untrue. The IGA for FATCA has been signed. We're hearing just a bit earlier too about this iron sands decision by the EPA and how this is a defeat for the government. This is a win for the government insofar as we are the ones, in fact it's my ministerial colleague sitting here in front, who has put in the system unique here in New Zealand, and for the first time, that these very decisions have to go through the EPA. So we're thrilled that this decision's going through, that there's actually been a process to review this. And again, let's not shy away from realising that before the national government there were no protections of this sort. And so when people think about the environment, they can rightly think about the National Party and its incredible proud record here. What we're also hearing was discussion around clean green energy. Well, there's good news for the Greens here as well. Since 2008, when only about 65% of New Zealand's energy was clean and green, under a national government, that's risen to 75%. It has increased under a national government because we too believe in smart green technology and have been happy to embrace that. We heard about the dolphins, of course, the Maui dolphins. The debate continues, of course, for those who read the scientific journals between the different subspecies of hectors and Maui dolphins. But we heard yesterday from Nick Smith that it's been something like 30 years since there's been specified sightings in the area that's being discussed. So we need to get to the facts. And finally, particularly in relation to the Greens, this constant sort of belief that you can drive the economy on the fuel of slogans, that we just keep walking around and saying clean green technology, that somehow everything will be fine. And the trouble we have is when we turn to them and ask them what is an example of this smart green economy, there really isn't any answers. And again, it seems that the Greens believe you can drive the economy on the fuel of slogans, and that's unfortunate because ultimately, and we just hear again a scoff, but of course no answer to what that is. Though I do see there was a plan the other day to have 3D printing. I suppose it's got something to do with Russell Norman's desire to print cash. If you do it in 3 dimensions, you can sort of triplicate the process. Of course, the oddity of the release of the plan is that the plan had to create a plan to look at 3D printing. Very, very odd. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill about taxation and annual rates. National government is continuing its tax approach. I think it's useful to point out for the House, because there's been a lot of debate over recent days, that 50% of the tax in this country is paid by the top 12% of earners. And so I think it's important to put it in context. The corollary to that, of course, is that more often than not, families, say mum and dad and 2 kids, earning the average wage, are almost tax neutral. In other words, they pay ultimately no tax because of the array of support that is in place, and I think it's important to note that to fill out the picture. This is a good bill. It's a necessary bill, Mr. Speaker. It makes some minor changes around things like employee allowances, and as the title notes, it's also around remedial matters. I won't go into those details, but I commend the bill to the House.
I call the honourable member Dr. David Clark.
Mr. Speaker, I came into this Parliament motivated by a concern about the growing gap between rich and poor. This bill confirms the 2010 tax changes made by the National Government. It confirms measures that have grown the gap between rich and poor in New Zealand. The 2010 tax package saw the top 10% of earners get over 40% of the value of the tax cuts. The bottom 20% got less than 2% of the value of those tax cuts, and any benefit they got was swallowed up in a GST increase of 15% that went through at the very same time. This is the sobering reality, Mr. Speaker. We have a government opposite that is content to protect the interests of the wealthiest few New Zealanders, the top 1% of earners, while the rest of New Zealand is going backwards. And today, in this bill, we are being asked to support these changes that will drive the gap between the very wealthiest and the rest of New Zealand. And here we are in this Parliament passing those changes through again. This is the most uncomfortable bit about this bill. The bill will proceed anyway. The bill has the support of the National Government and its allies, those who have kowtowed the whole way through, content to see that gap between the very wealthiest and the rest of New Zealand grow and grow and grow. We have to pass tax bills because they make